This is a big part of Ukraine's game plan. They want to cut off Russian logistics. And what they've done here is damage these two parallel bridges, the Chonhar Bridge, which is one of the few supply routes from Crimea, which was, of course, illegally annexed by Russia back in 2014, and parts of southern Ukraine, key parts of southern Ukraine that the armed forces there are looking to liberate in this counter-offensive. And what they've done is they've hit it with Storm Shadow missiles. These are the British long-range missiles that were sent over to Ukraine around about a month ago, and since then have been causing a little bit of havoc with the supply lines behind the front lines for Russia, hitting all kinds of logistics. And what this means is it's going to make it more difficult for Russia to supply its troops from Crimea. It doesn't make it impossible. It just means they're going to have to go a long way around, and that soaks up time and resources and makes it harder to supply. And I guess the big question out of this is, how badly damaged is this bridge? How long will it take to repair? If they do repair it, will Ukraine hit it again? And also, is Ukraine going to try and hit other supply routes and bridges and roads and the like to prevent Russia from supplying their lines during this counter-offensive?
So that, yeah, it is quite an interesting development. Also quite disturbing, though, Steve, is intelligence that Russia might be considering an attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear facility. Now, that would be problematic as it's already in jeopardy because of the flooding after the dam was blown up.
And this is Europe's largest nuclear power plant, and there have been a lot of concerns around this power plant, not just after the blowing up of that dam, but since Russia occupied it. And that's been in that state for months. And we've spoken to, myself and my other colleagues in the Europe Bureau have spoken to power plant workers over previous months, and they're really concerned just about the way Russia has been running this plant on its own, let alone any potential threat like this. This was released as a video message by President Zelensky a few hours ago, and he said that Ukrainian intelligence had received information that Russia is considering the scenario of a terrorist act at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, a terrorist act with the release of radiation. He said they have prepared everything for this. We don't know anything more about this intelligence. We don't know how accurate it is. Of course, we're in a war. There's a fog of war. Both sides use information and disinformation. We don't know how accurate this is, but President Zelensky has released this information because he has concerns around this. Now, the Kremlin has come out and denied this. They've described it as another lie, but there are concerns about what is going to happen with this power plant. Zaporizhzhia itself, the city, is in Ukrainian hands, but the power plant commonly associated with Zaporizhzhia is a little bit to the south of the city. And it hasn't been liberated yet by Ukrainian armed forces, and that is going to be a key priority of this counter-offensive because they are deeply concerned about the potential for a nuclear catastrophe at this power plant, and they want to get it back in their hands.
Yeah. Steve, you've returned. You were in Ukraine reporting just recently. You've come back. President Zelensky just yesterday said progress is a little slower than desired. Give us an idea of what faces these forces. We know that they've taken some small villages, but, you know, trying to really regain significant ground.
That's right. They've taken around about 8 villages, I think it is now. That term that President Zelensky uses, slower than desired, of course, Ukraine wants it to happen quickly because they want their people to stop dying. And I think slower than desired too, because he's trying to dampen down expectations that this operation is going to be rapid. I think what happened last year in September, we saw the Kharkiv counteroffensive where Ukraine regained 10,000 square kilometres in just a month, and I think they surprised themselves with that counteroffensive. But this is very, very different. What happened with the Kharkiv counteroffensive was that the Russian troops were a little bit thin on the ground in that area because a lot of them had been redeployed to Kherson because they were worried about a counteroffensive there. And Ukraine was able to really push through those parts of the Kharkiv region quite quickly. But since the fall of Kherson last year, in November, Russia has had essentially 6 months to really reinforce these occupied territories. with trenches, with mines, with anti-tank ditches, and they fortified these regions where they know that Ukraine wants to launch its counteroffensive through, particularly around that area around Zaporizhia. So it's going to be much heavier going. It's going to be a much harder slog for Ukraine. But I think it's also important to stress at the moment, this counteroffensive is not at the all-out assault stage. 12 battalions have been gathered together by Ukraine for this counteroffensive, and those, brigades, I should say, 12 brigades have been formed, and those brigades have been training with Western weapons and really learning these new systems. And of those 12 brigades, only 3, according to prominent analysts, have been deployed in the counteroffensive so far. So that gives you a sense that it's not all out, that they're probing, they're looking for the weaknesses and the strengths in this front line. It's a front line that is 1,000 kilometres, the length of a drive from Sydney to Brisbane. So it's a very long front line, and they're looking for those strengths and weaknesses in that front line, and you can really see that they're probing around the east, around Bakhmut, in the southeast around Vuhledar, and also in the south around Zaporizhia. So they're trying to find the best place to break through, and it's going to take time if they are to do that. So I think President Zelensky in those comments is trying to dampen down expectations, and there is a sense too in some ways that there may even be some kind of pause in operations going on at the moment. That's certainly something that's been speculated about at the moment, but they're picking their moment of when they think is the right moment to really commit those brigades. So yeah, I think that's President Zelensky managing expectations about the counteroffensive.
Yeah, and when you paint that visual picture of Sydney to Brisbane, you get a sense of just, what a difficult job they have. Steve, really good to talk. Thanks so much.